Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with the story in which our OP found themselves battling not just the sweltering heat of a hotel leisure center, but the wrath of one of the most outrageous Karens around. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. How dare you hold my son, you idiot? I just saved your son's life. I used to work at a small local hotel where I had to juggle just about every role you can imagine. It wasn't glamorous, long, unsociable hours, terrible pay, and management that cared more about numbers than their employees. After about a year of this, the general manager offered me some shifts down in the leisure area. Desperate for more hours, I accepted. The leisure center had a pool, a small gym, and a jacuzzi, but working down there was no easy task. It was ridiculously hot, around 40 degrees Celsius, and between the cooking, cleaning, managing the pool, and giving tours to potential members, I was always on the move. One scorching day, I was sweating buckets, mopping up near the jacuzzi when I noticed a kid pressing his face and hands against the glass door. No biggie, we've all been kids once. So I finished up and headed to the reception desk where I met the real challenge of the day, the quintessential Karen. I smiled, greeted her, and asked how I could help. "Can you let us in? Charlie wants to swim," she demanded. I asked if she was staying at the hotel or if she was a member, knowing where this conversation was likely headed. She immediately launched into a tirade about how our prices were ridiculous and how far she had driven to get here. After a lot of back and forth and some impressive cursing aimed at me, she finally stormed off, vowing to get me fired. I brushed it off. Empty threats like that were all too common in my job. As the night wound down and everyone left, I finally got some peace. The leisure area was quiet, and I was wiping down the gym equipment when I heard a loud splash. I rushed to the poolside and saw the same kid from earlier, fully clothed and sinking fast to the bottom of the deep end. Without a second thought, I dove in, pulled him up, and checked to make sure he was okay. He was crying, clearly scared out of his mind, but otherwise unharmed. While I was trying to calm him down, out of nowhere, I heard the sound of stomping. Boom, 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 followed by an angry, shrill voice. "Get your hands off my kid, you pervert," Karen screamed, marching toward me, drink in hand, her face flushed red. Before I could even explain, she took a swing at me. Luckily, a few regulars who'd stuck around stepped in and held her back. "He just wanted to swim, and you were going to let him drown," she shrieked, completely ignoring the fact that her kid had nearly drowned because she wasn't watching him. I pointed to the large sign by the front desk, reminding her that kids under 12 had to be supervised by an adult at all times, but she wasn't having any of it. She even tried to throw her drink at me and went on to yell, "If you touch my son again, my fiancé will kill you." By this point, our duty manager, Jack, had made his way down to see what the commotion was about. Calm as ever, he told her that she needed to leave, explaining that she was causing a public disturbance and threatening staff, which wouldn't be tolerated. But Karen wasn't done. "I'm not leaving until you sack that piece of crap," she screamed, pointing at me. Jack didn't miss a beat. "Well, you'll be waiting a long time, but if you'd like, you can explain your behavior to the police who've been called." Suddenly, the fire drained out of her, and with wide eyes, she grabbed her kid and stormed off. She met up with her Karen troop at the entrance, and they all disappeared as quickly as they had arrived. The regulars who had helped calm down the situation came back the next evening with chocolates and a crate of beer for me. It was their way of saying thanks, and honestly, it made me feel like maybe all the hassle was worth it. For a moment, at least. A few months later, I handed in my notice. The pay was terrible, and dealing with people like Karen was becoming way too common. But this story? Oh, it still comes up whenever anyone asks about my time in the hotel industry. Moral of the story, avoid the hotel industry if you can, especially if you're not a fan of dealing with a never-ending parade of entitled Karens. You do your job as an employee. Okay, you weren't a lifeguard, but you were the closest one to help and got yelled at. You help, Karen's angry. You don't help, Karen's still angry. And our second story. Lady tries to call the manager after I threw a guy out of the bar I work at. 5 years ago, I used to work as a bouncer at the bar my best friend owns. Not every day, not every weekend. He just called me in when the evening got nasty. Fast forward to present. I'm not really suitable as a bouncer anymore because I'm an above-the-knee amputee, but I still do work behind the bar from time to time. Last Thursday, I was sitting in the bar with a colleague drinking some beer after a 14-hour workday. Behind the bar were two nice ladies, Paula and Leah. Both were minding their business, serving beer and cocktails. 1 hour in, Enzo, a very nice Italian guy, came in, totally wasted. He ordered a Godfather, 6CL bourbon and 6CL Kahlua on ice, and one more, and one more. He started getting really offensive against both ladies, saying things you should not say to any lady anywhere. Paula looked over to me in a help-seeking way. I waved her over as if I wanted to order something. I told her to endure it because Enzo's usually a very nice guy, and to give him something like a coffee or a tea. He actually drank the espresso Paula gave him, and from now on he didn't order any alcohol. But it didn't get any better. I was as offensive as before, and Paula got over to me asking me if I could talk to him. I told her to call a cab. It takes like 20 minutes to get a cab in my town, and then I walked over to him and asked him what was up. He just said he had a bad day and he didn't seem to want to go into depth, and I didn't ask further. I asked him to be a gentleman and apologize to the ladies, and he seemed to understand and apologized. I told him that I got a cab for him and that I would appreciate when he took it. He thanked me, and I supported him as well as I could on his way out. The cab came, and I helped him to get in and told the taxi driver to definitely take him home. The cab drove off. 10 seconds later, a lady, let's call her Karen, stormed out of the bar and shouted at me, "How dare you to throw a guy out of my son's bar?" Me, totally perplexed, knowing that this is not the owner's mother. "Excuse me, what?" Karen, "You don't even work here. I'll get my son to ban you from the bar." Me, "I know the owner. He's my best friend. And I know his mother." "You are not his mother." Karen, "I am his mother. How dare you?" Me, "Just call him up." Karen took out her phone and dialed. 4 seconds later, she seemed to have someone on her phone asking to talk to the owner of this bar. 2 seconds later, Leah came out with the bar's phone in her hand and asked me to take the call because the owner wasn't available. I told her that there's no need to because Karen was the person who called. I explained the situation to her and asked her if I should throw her out. She said yes. So I told Karen to leave, and she decided not to do, but to push, beat, and kick me. I had some troubles keeping my balance, but I did. I said I'd call the police, but it didn't matter to her. She pushed me again, but this time she stood on my prosthetic foot. As a consequence of that, my stump rotated inside the socket, the prosthetic misaligned, and I tipped over like a piece of domino. As I lay on the ground, Karen was just telling me that this is what I deserved and kept on swearing. Leah helped me to get up and sit down on the bench, and I called the police. As the police came, Karen was still there and told the police I would have assaulted her, but with Leah having my back, they didn't believe her. I told them the whole story and pressed charges against her for mayhem and harassment, and the police took her with them. I'd really like to see what happens next. Update time. I got a letter from court today. The state attorney wants to press charges against Karen for mayhem, harassment, and, I really want to know why and how that happened, resistance against police officers. I don't understand what makes people think it's okay to physically assault another person over their own mistake, especially someone with a prosthetic. That's horrible. I don't care who the person is, there's never a reason it's deserved. And our last story. Neighbors think they own the land we bought. When my fiance and I bought this house last September, we thought we were getting a dream deal. 4 parcels of land, each offering its own potential. The house sits on 1, 2 are fenced in, and the 4th? Well, the 4th is the source of our neighborly nightmare. It's a plot behind our house that was neglected, overgrown, and full of dumped trash. We planned to clean it up, but as soon as the neighbors got wind of it, things took a turn. These neighbors, who've lived there for over a decade, suddenly decided they had a stake in our land. Their reasoning? They want to chop down the trees to help with the mosquito problem. Now, I'm not a fan of those trees either. They're invasive, but their sudden interest raised some red flags. My worry was that if they started making improvements, they might claim the land through adverse possession, and since they've been here for 12 years, it's not a wild concern. But they've never actually done anything with the land. It's always been neglected, so legally they've got no claim. The kicker is that their entire argument hinges on the fact that the other houses in the neighborhood own separate strips of land behind them, but their situation isn't the same. These two neighbors only own the land their houses sit on, with a narrow 8-foot driveway between them and the land that belongs to us. They keep pointing to the other houses as if that somehow proves they own a piece of our land. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. I did my homework. I pulled up the county records, checked the GIS map, and made sure to have the deed and title for our property in hand. Everything, and I mean everything, shows that we own that land. The previous owner even put survey stakes in place to mark the boundaries, and those stakes are still there. Their names have never been associated with our parcel of land, but that doesn't seem to stop them from acting like they have some kind of claim. One of them even went to the borough council, and apparently someone there told her she owned part of our land. That was completely bogus because the council doesn't handle property titles. Now she's parading around with this mistaken belief that she's got some sort of legitimate claim. We tried to be reasonable. I put up no trespassing signs, asked them not to dump anything on our land, which I found out her son had been doing, and tried explaining the situation, but they just won't listen. Their entire argument boils down to, we feel like it's ours, which, sorry to say, doesn't hold up in court. But here's the update. We have the survey that was done before we bought the house, and it shows, without a doubt, that the land is ours. The property lines are clearly marked with stakes and pins, and if the neighbors still want to challenge it, they'll need to get their own survey done. Until then, we're moving forward with our plans. We're going to clean up part of the land and extend our fence, which complies with a deed restriction allowing for a portion of the land to be used as a shared driveway with the other neighbors. If they continue to trespass, dump, or try to cut down the trees, we're filing a police report and possibly a lawsuit. It's really that simple. We've already got a camera pointed at the area, and I'm planning on installing a wired one for a more reliable feed. We've been busy, but fencing that land off is now a priority. As far as I'm concerned, the law's on our side, and their feelings won't change that. They can either accept the reality of the situation, or they'll find themselves dealing with legal consequences. Either way, we're not backing down. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.